welcome to another very, very interesting and enlightening edition of your feedback program, Beyond Limit. Beyond Limit is a weekly show that highlights issues around persons with albinism and persons with disabilities. On the show today, as we always do, we want to address something very, very topical. Interestingly, like you have in Nigeria and in several countries around the world and Africa, we have efforts at inclusion. Inclusion has to do with women, children, and persons with disabilities. Globally, there is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and in Africa, we have the Africa Disability Protocol, the ADP. ADP was enacted in 2014, and the UNCRPD I talked about earlier was in 2006. Nigeria on its own has made significant strides. It has the Nigeria Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Prohibition Law of 2018, and of course, in Edo, we have the same law, Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Prohibition Law 2022. One of the mandates of that law is the establishment of a commission to persons with disability. And so in Nigeria, we have National Council of Persons with Disabilities, and Edo, we have the Edo State Council Commission for Persons with Disability. On the show today, we're going to be looking at, now that we have a commission and indeed a law against persons with disabilities, for the protection of the rights of persons with disabilities, we have implemented the law. Good. But beyond implementation, there ought to be effectiveness. It's good just to have a commission and the law, but indeed that it's effectively carrying out. It's effective, doing the right things, not just being there. And to have this very interesting discussion, particularly when we look at, in the course of this program, we look at the activities of the Rule of Law and Corruption Program, ROLAC. ROLAC 2 are doing wonderful job. That they have been there all the way from when there was no law, for a disability right. When they became a law, they work together with different stakeholders to establish the Disability Rights Implementation Committee, the DRIC. And even after we have had the law, ROLAC is still there, working with organizations like the Commission, like with NAVID, Network for the Advancement of Persons with Visible Disabilities, and of course, JONAPID, the Joint National Association of Persons with Disabilities. So we're going to do a lot of unpacking today. To do this discussion with me, to have this program with me, he's a renowned legal practitioner, the director at the Edo State Ministry of Justice, a visually impaired professional, and of course the executive director of Network for the Advancement of Persons with Visible Disabilities, NAVID. Please join me as I make welcome Barrister Melody Omosa. Barrister, good morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Ibrahim.
Yes. So,
and also, good morning, listeners.
Yeah, well, you already said that a little bit behind schedule, so let's just go get right into it. In your opinion, generally, why is the Edo State Disability Law and indeed the establishment of the Edo State Commission for Disability, why are those two things such? Do we face their landmark achievements? Is this something we should celebrate?
All right, thank you very much. There, given the synopsis of the chronology we started laying out just now about the what has happened in the advocacy and call for protection of disability rights at the global, at the regional, and even at our local stage, from the establishment of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Africa Disability Protocol, the Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Prohibition Act, and the Edo State Persons with Disability Law. 2006, 2014, 2018, 2022 regs effectively. First, Nigeria is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Persons on the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the African Disability Protocol. And those those legal frameworks, enjoin state parties to take action to domesticate, if you like, make happen what they are signing, what is signed into the. It's an international obligation that Nigeria has to meet under its commitment to the UN. So even though it took so long from the 2007 when it signed the convention itself and 2007 when it ratified and signed the optional protocol. We did not have the law until 2018, but good enough we have it. Good enough we now have the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. Good enough Edo State also has followed suit by establishing the Edo State Persons with Disability Commission in just this year, 2025, after the law was enacted in 2022. So these are landmark legislations that should be celebrated. And for the first time, what we are also seeing is that issues that deals with this disability rights have been criminalized, as in discrimination against persons with disability is not just a wrong for which affected parties can seek redress. It is now criminalized by both the National Act and the Edo State Disability Law. And so it's this is a very bold legal framework that, if well implemented, will guarantee inclusion for persons with disabilities in diverse areas of life and make them participants in governance and in development. So yes, to answer your question straightly, it's an achievement.
Let me try to come. As I said earlier, started a little bit behind schedule. So we're going to try to unpack as much as possible the issues, because there are many. You talk about the fact that there's now a little framework at the global, regional, national, and then state level. And so there are, I assume that this legal framework covers areas around access of accessibility, public buildings, education, healthcare, employment, justice, particularly public life. And what is important for me is that it is an obligation, not necessarily like a suggestion or an advice. It's like an obligation on state parties. So what I would like to ask, really, specifically, what obligations does this law confer on state parties, on Nigeria, on those states particularly, and other, the general public, other persons, other stakeholders?
Okay, so in signing, in ratifying this international document, these international articles, what the Commission, rather what Nigeria has signed up to, is that, look, what we have in this document, we are going to replicate. Of course, the international document asks that state parties should ensure that there is education for access to education, free education, such as Article 25 of the UN Convention. It talks about issues of rehabilitation, empowering persons with disabilities to be able to contribute. It talks about, so all the articles in the convention makes provision for access to the environment, to information, to healthcare, and parties were enjoined to replicate them at their regional and state level. And that's what Nigeria has done. So that's why you see that the Nigerian Disability Act, it's a reproduction of the convention itself. And of course with varieties here and there, but basically and contextually, it is guaranteeing access to public life for persons with disability. The wording of the United Nations Convention is that, to the extent that persons with disability are able to live on an equal basis with others without any form of discrimination. So anything in life and in their daily living that impedes their functionality in different aspects the law has come to speak about it and to obligate states, individuals, on what specific role they should be playing to ensure that people with disabilities are not left out.
Go ahead. If you don't mind, you say that I don't want to say law. It obligates action or it puts responsibility on those on the state actors or other stakeholders. So if I could just add that if like there's a moratorium period within which some changes have to be made, are we still within that moratorium period in Edo?
Oh yes, we are. The law was passed in 2022, and there is a 5 years moratorium period for which strict implementation and adherence to the law, to certain aspects of the law. Otherwise, as it is today, right from its enactment, the law is already in force. But for certain aspects that need modification, buildings and infrastructures that were already in existence before the law was passed, the 5 years moratorium was given for some form of retrofitting to take place so that these infrastructures can now be made accessible to persons with disabilities. We are well within that. This is 3 years down the line, but I know very well that it's not going to happen automatically. There needs to be a lot of sensitization, and thank you for this platform and the KUFM for giving us the platform to make this. That first, the public needs to be aware that there is a call for them to act differently as it concerns persons with disabilities. Otherwise, by an act or omission, they will be running counterfoul of the provisions of the law. They no longer can pretend that they don't know. They cannot be different, because before you know it, a charge can lie against you that you are not complying with the law, because you have a building that was built some 15, 20 years ago, and 5 years after the law was passed, you have not taken steps to modify it. Whereas this is a public building for which persons with disabilities, like their counterparts without disabilities, should be able to access without any form of impediment, right? So that sensitization need be created. And of course, government still have buildings, infrastructures, programs and policies that are not yet inclusive, for which they need to also to take time to so do. But like I said, awareness is one. But on the part of government, they need to be deliberate and in making budgetary provisions to begin to by installment or in installment begin to modify buildings, infrastructures that they need to modify. That's right. Okay. Not in our case, we have a commission.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about that commission shortly. Why it's so important that we have a commission. Of course, I've made some points as to why this is important. But I want to just put it in perspective that you have said now that even though there's a law, and a lot of the public buildings are still not accessible, including the government houses, deputy government office, SSG office, speaker's office, they are still not in breach because it's a moratorium period. So I think let's put that balance there. So before we go into the commission, let's talk about ROLAC. ROLAC has been there, like I said in my intro, all the time. It has from when there was no law, when there's a law, even now with the commission, they are still here. And so let's talk about ROLAC. What role do ROLAC be playing in turning all our aspirations into reality for a difference?
Our aspirations, our advocacy, we'll be struggling, we'll be shouting, we're like a voice in the wilderness that no one seems to be hearing, calling for a law that will protect the rights of persons with disabilities. ROLAC jumped into the fray and expedited that. Their contribution so enormous. Well, even though it is collaborative, but it's very significant, the role they played in ensuring that the galvanized stakeholders to be focused on the need for us to have a disability law in Edo State, giving all the technical and financial support until that came out in 2022. You already said that between 2022 and 2025, when the commission was inaugurated as provided by the law, there was a transition period, if you like, where the Disability Rights Implementation Committee was set up just to ensure that there is no vacuum in terms of implementation, and that solely can be attributed to the support of ROLAC, the understanding and the support they are giving to the Disability Committee, so that Drake was established. And of course, they played very pivotal and critical role in having the Disability Commission inaugurated this year. And now that we have that commission, of course, their responsibility is to drive the implementation of the law. So, ROLAC under that is the Rule of Law Anti-Corruption Program, under the Access to Justice for persons for vulnerable groups, which include persons with disability, women and children. Their support has been very, very huge. I want to commend the program. I want to commend the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Alliance, which is funded by the European Union, for this very remarkable support they are giving to vulnerable groups in several states in Nigeria and in Edo State in particular.
Well, trying to say about this program, so I'm trying to back as much as possible. I know that specifically we have a commission now, and ROLAC is working with other stakeholders to strengthen that commission. So, two quick questions: why is that important? And in what way are we trying to strengthen the commission now?
Okay, thank you. Like you already noted, it's not enough to have a commission. The commission must be effective. So, first, from establishment of the commission to its effectiveness, ROLAC supported a program, the Right Above Title Lecture Program, in 2025 to celebrate the International Day for Persons with Disability, to make inclusion the heartbeat of governance in Edo State, moving from mere establishment to practical implementation of the law. ROLAC supported that project. ROLAC is also supporting presently the Network for the Advancement of People with Visible Disability, NAVI, which I serve as the executive director. So build the capacity of that commission to engage. They are developing an operational manual that will guide the day-to-day activity of the commission. They are also developing for the commission, supporting the development of a strategic 3-year plan that will guide the activity of the commission 2026 to 2028, and of course a work plan for 2026. These are activities that ROLAC is presently supporting. Of course, to make the awareness of the law appealing to every person in the Edo State, they have supported the simplification of the law under the project so that it becomes reader friendly. You don't need to be a lawyer to understand the technicalities of the law, if there is any, but law written in plain everyday language anyone can pick and read. So it is reader friendly. They supported the simplification. They are also carrying out an accessibility audit on the state of inclusion for persons with disability in the public service. All this is to arm the commission with verifiable evidence-based data for them to take up their work effectively. All of this is supported by the rule of law.
One is that they are able to strengthen the commission by developing a strategic plan for the next 3 years, 2028. So they are also working with other partners, particularly NAVI, to develop
operational manual,
to divide the disability law.
Yeah.
And then finally talking about you talked just now about the fact that coming around accessibility audit, you know. I know why I'm having to rush because of time, you know. So I'd like to know on that very last part about accessibility audit. Why is this important at this point?
Okay, we need to have a prototype, an evidence-based, when we're talking about inclusion of persons with disability in employment, for instance. If you like, you want to call it as one evidence-based survey that is carried out, we know presently that persons with disabilities are employed in the state civil and public service. So we need to know, how do they do their work? How accessible is the infrastructure? Are there reasonable accommodation? And what is the percentage of persons with disability in the service? Even though those state persons with disability law does not make any specific provision as to quota to be reserved for employment quota to be reserved for persons with disability. But the national law made that. But it will be interesting to note how the number of persons with disability, their performance, how much are they able to function, and what more needs to be done. It's just a fact-finding exercise, if you like. But that evidence will be used to enhance, if there are areas to be enhanced in how Edo State can scale up what they are presently doing. Because, like I said, persons with disability are in employment in the state. But if there's need to scale up what they are doing, if there is reasonable accommodation, if the infrastructure are disability inclusive, all of those we put to the fore. And of course, it will also help conversation along the areas of other areas under the law that accessibility needs to be provided. So perhaps this is the first, not the last, of several surveys that will be conducted across the different assigned areas of obligation or duty that the commission on education. This is on employment. Something needs to be done on education, on access to health, on even political integration of persons with disabilities. These are areas that the commission should be interested in, because you need to also have a plan. As you take up your assignment, the commission is still very nascent, very new. But as you take up this assignment, you need to have evidence of what is on ground so that it knows how to.
And of course, that way we can monitor progress. Yeah, this has been a very wonderful one today. It's only a pity that we didn't have much time to unpack. So, listeners out there, today's discussion reminds us one simple thing. A law is only powerful when it is understood, enforced, and used, not just on paper. The disability law, with support from ROLAC, actions or activities by particularly NABSID and of course Jonathan, and the strengthening of key institutions like the Disability Commission, a two state is taking steps. That ultimately will lead not just from establishment or policy to implementation. So it's important that we all know this so that we can all play our part and also ask the right question. So to round up the show, I'd like to give you the final word on my brother Melody. So what's your final what the final take, what the final word to our listeners, particularly duty bearers, the government, the Disability Commission, to ROLAC, and then of course the general public? What's your final word?
For ROLAC, it's just a note of appreciation to say thank you to them very much for the continued support for the disability community in Edo State, now through the commission. And for the ex-official members, duty bearers, the commission, the law has made provision for at least 10. More could have been included, but basically 10 of them have their duty already quartered. They must ensure that that the minimum that is expected is that those MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies that have been specifically made named by the law to serve as an example of inclusion and access of persons with disabilities for the other MDAs to follow. For the general public to note that there is a disability law, and it is in their very good interest to know the content of that law, so that law enforcement agencies a few years down the line do not come talking and telling them they are running counter to a law that they pretend. Of course, like we say, ignorance of the law is no excuse. You cannot discriminate in sending that your child to school, because the law has criminalized discrimination. But people still lock up their children at home because they can't afford the luxury of sending them to school. They are so ashamed to be associated with their children, whereas we have people with disabilities who are ruling the world presently just know that you no longer have that if you like right, so to speak. So, or discretion, that is the word. You no longer have the discretion to say whether this child should go to school or not. It is not a criminal act to defend it. So that is how I want to wrap it today. And to say thank you to our listeners for joining us this morning.
This is how much time we have, that we have actually outsourced our time. We thank KSO, we thank ROLAC, we thank the district government. And of course, we thank every stakeholder who has made us of Nabi, but almost who has joined us to unpack this very difficult, and very revealing and taking educative, issues that we have discussed today. So there you have it. This is the program, the weekly program, Beyond Limits, the program that deals on inclusion and justice and dignity for persons with ability and persons with disabilities. Join us again on this same station, same time, next week, as we continue to push boundaries, because justice, dignity, and inclusion truly have no limits. Bye-bye.